Welcome back to another episode of the Domestique Hotseat Podcast, the cycling podcast where we put riders in the hot seat and ask some questions that you might care about. Today, we've got Nick Schultz, and we talk about what it was like on Israel Premier Tech during the 2025 season, and I guess the way that he feels about the team and the transition. Talk about a bunch of other stuff, including dodging the bullet of being sent to Paris-Nice and instead going to Tirreno-Adriatico this year. And hopefully you enjoy and sit back, relax. Ladies and gentlemen, Nick Schultz. All right, so Nick, let's begin with an easy one. What got you into cycling?
Well, probably a little bit different to normal. I just saw it on TV. My dad was a cycling fan. I guess he did a bit when he was a teenager, but I mean, this was probably 20 or so years after he'd ridden a bike, and he was just watching the 6 p.m. highlights on SBS.
Yep.
And I was 6 years old, I think. And
really?
Yeah, super young. And I just saw it. I was hooked. Just was like glued to the telly. Didn't know what it was. Didn't understand anything. And then sort of as each night went past at 6 p.m, I was next to him on the telly watching it, and then started nagging mum and dad for a bike. Yeah. So yeah, I just saw it on TV and loved what I saw, basically.
So for those of you who are not, who are unfortunate enough to not be born in Australia, I think what Nick's talking about there is the SBS Cycling Central highlights. So they used to do a 30-minute package sort of running through all the highlights of the day. And it was an absolutely fantastic program. I didn't find it until a bit later than 6 years old, but I think most Australians that are into cycling from that kind of era certainly look back very fondly on something that a bit like GCN Plus. I don't think we realized how good it was until now it's gone.
For sure. It was also, there were only like key stages shown live. Like they'd only show maybe 3 stages of the whole tour live. So 6 p.m. package was all you'd get. And it was awesome.
Yeah.
It was.
That was actually leading into the next question, because those of you who live in Europe, I don't think you understand how hard it is to actually follow cycling in Australia. You might be getting a bit of insight now because of all the streaming situation that's going on. It's an absolute mess, but it is so challenging to watch cycling in Australia even now. Was there a race? Was it the Tour de France? Was there anything in particular that captured your attention and made you decide that is the path that I want to go down? Was it seeing someone win in Roubaix? Was it seeing, I don't know, for a lot of younger Australian cyclists, it's Cadel Evans at the 2011 Tour de France. Was there anything in particular that you thought, yeah, I want to experience that?
Yeah, it was the Tour, and it was, to be completely honest, it was Lance. He was dominant. It was watching him, the way he raced, and I was obsessed with Lance Armstrong and the Tour de France, and then that sort of snowballed to being obsessed with everything else, and key riders over the years, Tom Boonen and guys like this that really sort of captured my attention and made me want to pursue it further, for sure.
And was there a cyclist that I modelled myself off Andy Schleck, which was an absolute mistake because I think Andy Schleck's about 60 kilos and on a good day, I'm 88. But was there a specific rider other than Lance Armstrong, who I'm sure at a certain point you decided you probably didn't want to model off him anymore? Was there a specific rider that you really looked at and you thought, if I could be like that?
Yeah, Tom Boonen, for sure.
Yeah.
I think, haircut, almost still now a little bit. He went through an era of wearing sweatbands, and I started wearing sweatbands on my wrists when I was like 10 years old, and just little things like, quite high nicks and long socks and definitely Boonen. I think there was probably even an occasion where I took a photo of Tom Boonen to the hairdresser to try and get the same
Yeah,
cut.
really?
Yeah.
How good. So you're from Brisbane, is that correct? So most people that think of Australian cycling would think of probably one thing, the Tour Down Under. And then the other thing would be Cadell's Great Ocean Road Race. Is there, like, what, you would have been quite far away from that. It's actually kind of difficult to get further away from those races. I've spoken to some Aussie cyclists, and things like the Tour Down Under played a pivotal role. Did you get down there as a young kid to see the race?
Not at all, no. Obviously, like you say, Brisbane's a long way away. And I think also just in general, we're not a really cycling culture in Brisbane or Queensland in general. I don't think it's as strong as that of South Australia or even Victoria, where there's or Western Australia. Actually, there's big cycling communities there. So it was definitely difficult to be so far away when I was young. It was a really small sort of group of cyclists around my age. But the Tour Down Under, it was obviously definitely an exciting period of the year for me to follow, because you didn't have to stay up late, or you could actually, get the results at the same time as the race.
Yeah.
It was awesome. But the Tour Down Under was also a much smaller race at that time. Like, this is literally 25 years ago. But I distinctly remember when Contador and Luis Leon Sanchez were off the front, and Liberty Seguros, like, it was Contador's comeback race, I think, after a big injury, and sort of thinking like, oh, that's pretty cool. These Spaniards from Liberty Seguros are here racing in Oz. And, but yeah, never got to experience it. I remember also the Worlds was in Geelong at some point. Obviously I was a bit older at that point, and quite a few friends went to see that. And yeah, unfortunately, we didn't. And, my first exposure to Tour Down Under was in 2024 when I actually finally raced it, because I also kind of avoided it in my career too. Weirdly, it might sound surprising, but it was a race that I never was putting my hand up to actually race until these later stages in my career now.
Yeah, right. And was that intentional, I'd assume? What was the rationale behind that? Is it that you thought other races around the same time of the year favoured you, or was it, it's a challenging race to perform well at, because it is literally the first race of the year. It's really just stretching your legs out, or at least it used to be a bit of a race to go and see what your form's like coming into the start of the year. What was the rationale behind avoiding it?
I think it started pretty early in my sort of pathway, the idea around not starting too hard too early, I would say, because I spent some years as an amateur in France, and I sort of really learned the art of a proper off season when I was there, and taking a lot of time off the bike. And even the thought as an under 23 doing the nationals in January, I was like, oh, this seems so early. I've only been training for a short period of time. And then when I turned pro, I was riding for Caja Rural, which was a team that didn't do the Tour Down Under, because at that point it was in the World Tour, and I had no interest in trying to go to nationals and prove myself worthy of a spot with Uni SA. It just seemed like a lot of a big unknown for something that wasn't a guarantee. And then I went from Caja Rural to GreenEdge, and for GreenEdge, Tour Down Under is probably one of the highest pressure races of the year. And some of my peers would talk about that, and I was like, oh God, I can't really imagine myself enjoying a month off the bike in October, November, and thinking about going to this high pressure environment to start the year. So, it was just a timing thing. I always thought Tour Down Under looked cool, but maybe a little bit of fear of sort of ruining the only time of year we get to be a little bit more relaxed, and making it a pretty high stress time of year when I really valued, Christmas and New Year and sort of actually relaxing a bit before getting into racing.
Yeah, but then having a look here, you've made a bit of a habit of it. So from 2024, you've gone 2024, 2025, and 2026. What's what's changed then? Because obviously your calendar hasn't. What is it now that is a draw card? Is it the fact that the team wants to send you there as an Aussie that people can get behind? What's the rationale behind jumping into it now?
Yeah, I think in 2024 we were going there with a strong team of Corbin Strong and Stevie Williams, and I've kind of since being in this team been a key guy for those two, and so that the team wanted to send me, and I was really open to it at that point. I was also going to spend a bit of time in Australia through November, which I normally wouldn't do. So I kind of thought, oh, this is a good year to try. I'm actually in Australia for a bit, and can sort of fast track my training a little compared to past years. And then, went to Tour Down Under. That was probably one of the highlights of my career, that 2024 Down Under. Stevie won, and it was just a great team performance, and we had such a good group there. It was so fun. And I remember saying, like, I can't believe I've never wanted to be at the start line of this race before, and saying to team directors, like, I want to be here every year now. I want to start my year every year. So, hopefully that trend continues until I stop.
But if I'm having a look here correctly, I don't see a nationals on your calendar. So I guess my question to you would be, from the perspective of an Australian, do you think our nationals is at the right time? So for people that don't know, the Australian nationals is around the 8th of January, isn't it? It's the first race of the cycling season. I think in part that's a good thing, because I don't think the Australian nationals would get any attention if it was in November. But do you think it would be better off for the race overall if people were coming at the end of the season carrying end of season form versus 8th of January kind of form?
I think the start of the season is definitely better than the end of the season. I know personally I probably wouldn't make the effort to travel back to Australia for a race in October or November. Yeah, but right. I think they could reposition the Nationals to the same time as the New Zealand Nationals, which is after Tour Down Under. I think it's 2 weeks after Tour Down Under. Yeah. Or maybe a 1 week. I'm not 100% sure. Oh, maybe it's 2 weeks after Down Under and 1 week after Cadell's. I think it is. I think that'd be a fantastic time to do the Nationals. Everyone's different, but it's to be comfortable in Europe. Europe needs to be home. So doing the Nationals, you're actually not doing that from home. It's a trip to do the national title. But if you can combine that with going to Adelaide and then the Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road race, and just extending that trip for a week to do the Nationals, I think it would be better I think you'd get more guys do it, because I think a lot of guys, if they stay in Europe for Christmas or New Year, aren't going to rush back when they could wait another week or so to do Down Under. That's certainly the case for myself. And it also just means you do get to be a little bit more relaxed through the festive period in terms of logistics. I mean, if you're doing the Nationals, I think you're pretty much on a plane to Perth on the 2nd or 3rd of January, when it's kind of key time with friends and family, and it's intense, the season, and it doesn't interest me to make that relaxing time really, really busy with organising flights and well, I'd love to do the Nationals, but the timing of it just doesn't make sense to me.
I guess it also depends, because I think you're being a bit generous with the timeline there, because it is hot in Australia in January. I think most people, like I know for example, Luke Plapp was doing, like he did the Tour of Bright at the end of the year. He was doing a lot of training to try and adapt to the heat. So it is a real challenge. And it is one of the hard things about Australian cycling is it almost becomes a bit of an afterthought because so much is over in Europe. But unfortunately, the way that it improves is, I guess, by having people over in Australia. I wanted to talk to you about your calendar. So you were over in Tirreno-Adriatico, correct? That was your most recent race. And how much of a bullet do you feel that you dodged not going to Paris-Nice this year?
Yeah, pretty big one.
Yeah.
I think it's all a bit of luck, really. I've done Paris-Nice a couple of times. Had good weather, bad weather. I asked to do Tirreno-Adriatico this year because I've never done it before.
Mm.
And I'm getting older, and it was a race I've always sort of thought I'd like to do. But team goals and stuff have always just meant I was either at Paris-Nice or not racing in this period. And yeah, pretty glad to have come to Tirreno. I was a bit, I think I was a bit shocked at how hard the week was. Looked
Yeah.
at the parkour before coming here. It didn't look particularly crazy, but that just meant the race was raced a lot harder. But yeah, pretty happy not to have been at Paris-Nice. It's even with good weather, it's a really hard race. It's a very different race. But yeah, big bullet dodged for sure. And I think it was just a really good preparation to be at Tirreno for what's to come.
Big time. Anyone that hasn't seen, Jensen Plowright was taking the piss with some scuba goggles on one of those stages. It was crazy. But Paris-Nice, that was the one that had everyone's attention because it was going to be Vingegaard versus Ayuso. I think people were having a look at it as a way to see what Vingegaard's form is against someone like Ayuso, who is a genuine challenger. But when Ayuso crashed, I found all of the attention shifted to Tirreno-Adriatico. Did you feel that, the focus on this race? Did it feel like a race that a lot of people were paying attention to? I mean, Isaac Del Toro at the front, a lot of people are really interested in how he's going, and Matteo Jorgensen, Pellizzari, they were, I guess, kind of challenging. Did you feel that attention shift when you're on the ground there? What was the vibe on the ground at the race?
I think there was a bit of chatter about this amongst the peloton, actually. I think like the way Paris-Nice was raced, it seemed quite a bizarre sort of GC there. So I think from that perspective, Tirreno was probably a lot more entertaining for spectators because there was a real race going on for the win. But there was just a lot of conversation in the bunch about the depth at Tirreno and perhaps just a kind of a shift. I mean, normally Paris-Nice is it's any ASO stage race in France is sort of deemed as like a Tour de France warm-up race, and just seemed like quite a lot of the big hitters were avoiding that race. Also in the sprint field,
there was no sprint field.
In Tirreno was crazy, and GC riders aside from the sort of the freaks. But there was definitely, I think there was a fair bit of attention around Tirreno, but honestly, as a rider, it's kind of just, I don't really take notice of that stuff, and it's kind of hard to tell when you're out there on the bike.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys come away with 10th with Alessandro Pinarello. With the quality of the field, I mean, above you on 10 is Magnus Sheffield, Ben Healy, Santiago Buitrago, Giulio Ciccone, Primoz Roglic, Tobias Johannesson, Giulio Pellizzari, Matteo Jorgensen, and Isaac Del Toro. Again, that is a stacked top 10, like you were saying. Walking away with a 10th place, you have made it into the top 10. How's the team? What's the team chatter like after that? How is everyone feeling?
Yeah, really good. I think it was a really positive week. Alessandro's new on the team. He's a young Italian, come from Bardiani. And I think he's really noticing the sort of performance bump you get moving to a team like ours, where I think everything's just about as dialed as it can be. And he performed brilliantly throughout the week. He really took it on, and such a nice, calm character to ride for. And it wasn't the ambition going in to put a number on any sort of GC result, but we said at the start of the week that Alessandro would have a free card to give it a crack. And at that point, it was sort of like not fully supported by the team every day. Like, we weren't going to ride as a GC team. We had stage ambitions. We had Corbin Strong here, Oded Kugat for the sprint stages, and so it was kind of split objectives. But Alessandro just showed day in, day out that he was really around the mark on the harder days, and we really put some resources behind him, and it was a real pleasure. And I think 10th place. Okay, it doesn't sound like a lot, but then when you list the names in front of him, it's an absolutely fantastic result, and I think it's a really good building block for us as a team, and a good test for him, and perhaps it might open his own eyes to some of his potential for future races to come.
Big time. And having a look at the two teams that have been sent. So you've got Biniam Gamay racing at Paris-Nice, and then you've got yourself, Pinarello, racing here. Was this an opportunity to test out different GC or different Tour de France teams as you move into that period of the year? Is the goal with the Tour de France, with the team, still very much stage wins with Biniam Gamay? Because having a look at his form in Paris-Nice compared to some of the other sprinters, I think I'm certainly not breaking ground here by saying I think the level needs to come up. What's the chatter around the team in regards to moving into these bigger races as the season goes on, and the classics as well?
Yeah, look, I don't really know. I know that the team that went to Paris-Nice was there for preparation for the classics. So it was a really our classic squad, essentially, Belgian classics, or Cobble Classics squad. And I think the goal of Paris-Nice was, at least from what little bits and pieces that I heard, was preparation. So I don't think it was a key target race for the guys as such. So that might mean they went into it already a bit tired, or who knows? I don't really know. But I know it wasn't like a key objective race for the team. With Tirreno here, we had a squad that, a few of us will be doing a fair bit of racing in Italy. I'm still in Italy now for Sanremo. So it's just one of those things that sort of you get a bit familiar with the Italian roads, and again, they're both races that I think have quite a big preparation sort of title next to their names. It's the first big block in Europe, and a real see where you're at. And when you don't have one of the sort of the superstars fielded in the squad for these races, you've just kind of got to roll with the punches and see how things go, and then assess to take it forward. And I think the team's probably pretty happy with where we're all at coming out of both of those races.
Well, I was going to put that to you. Where are you at? How are you feeling coming out of a race like Tirreno? How are the legs? How's the body holding up?
Right now, I'm pretty tired. It was a really big week. I'd say it's one of the harder week-long stage races I've done. But personally, pretty good. I had a good week. I was able to support Alessandro well. I think comparing this time last year, where I'd sort of been riddled with injury, I'm miles ahead. So I'm sort of optimistic that will carry on to a good April and May.
Fingers crossed. So let's jump back a bit. You've been a little bit of a journeyman with the teams that you've moved around to. Some people, like, for example, I was talking to Jens Voigt, and he was saying he stuck with the team as long as he possibly could because he didn't like change. But you've jumped around a little bit. You started out with Orica, and then you jumped over, as you were saying before, to Caja Rural. What was the decision behind this move, and how, as a younger rider, did that impact you? I'd imagine you had to learn a little bit of Spanish. What was it like jumping from an Aussie team to one that maybe didn't feel so much like home?
Yeah, well, I think the stint you're talking about with Orica, that was just a stagiaire stint. So I was never a contract rider. It was a sort of a 6-week apprenticeship, let's say.
Oh, okay.
And I was at the time I was riding for the SEG Racing Academy, which was an under-23 continental team. And I just sort of finished the year with GreenEdge to do, I think I did maybe only 2 or 3 races with them. And it's like it's called a traineeship. And I'd actually already signed with Caja Rural before doing that stint. So I knew I'd be turning pro in, I think it was the following year in 2017. But it was really good exposure to the group. And I got to know quite a few of the riders that I didn't already know. obviously the staff, the directors, and GreenEdge had always had a very stable group of people in the team, staff and riders. So that was nice. It was a good experience and a good sort of learning curve. And then I started the next year as a pro with Caja Rural, and that was, like you say, really foreign. I didn't speak any Spanish. I didn't, I'd never been a pro bike rider before either, and I had to, learn the ropes in a really, really foreign environment, which I think was really helpful going, for the rest of my career. And I got to learn to be pretty self-sufficient and operate or try and enhance everything I was doing, learning from other people outside of the team or just researching stuff myself, because Caja Rural, especially at that time, was a really small budget team. The support we had was fantastic for what it was, but having experienced that GreenEdge stint for 6 weeks in the months, the final months of the year before, I sort of realized there was a performance gap. So I really sort of I was diving deep into everything I could do from a training perspective, nutrition perspective, body maintenance, whether it was physio or strength and conditioning, and just trying to enhance my level throughout that stint with Caja Rural, with the goal that I could move into a world tour team after my 2-year contract there, which is ultimately what eventuated. And I think I'd left a good impression with GreenEdge, and sort of 18 months into my stint at Caja Rural, Matt White was on the phone and wanted to sign me to them. So it was a really good stepping stone, and Caja Rural was actually a really good place to start, I think. And not everyone's a superstar at the time it was like 22 years old, but now that is sort of 16 years old in modern day cycling. But it was a great stepping stone, and I think it just suited my pathway pretty well. And I learnt Spanish, and which has been really good for my life now.
You had some really good opportunities there. So, I mean, Caja Rural quite often gets the wildcard entry to the Vuelta a España. And in both your years at Caja Rural, you raced the Vuelta. What was it like to race on a home team there in Spain? What's the pressure like for a team like Caja Rural? I'd imagine it's a lot of pressure to make the breakaways. There'd be a lot of pressure to get stage wins, that kind of stuff. What is it like being, I guess, racing a home race like the Vuelta on a team that is a wild card? So that, is there more pressure, or is the pressure less in the sense that we're at home, the fans are in our favor, we just want to get in the break?
Yeah, I think the priorities are different for a team like Caja Rural in that era at that race. They're a team that have evolved immensely in the last few years, and they're on their way to the Tour de France this year, and they've really, really stepped up since I was there, which is awesome to see. I mean, first of all, I think it felt weird being selected in the Vuelta as an Aussie on Caja Rural. There were a few foreigners on the team, but it was very Spanish, and obviously, Spanish Grand Tour. It felt like a real privilege to make the cut and be at the race both years. But yeah, the pressure was around exposure. So making early breakaways, doing as much as we could in that sense. So it was very different to racing for a bigger team with different objectives, but it was actually pretty stressful because making the breakaway isn't as easy as it looks. And there were some heated moments, in briefings if there was a day where we missed a breakaway, and it wasn't good, let's say, which is, kind of, sometimes it felt weird because it's like, well, the breakaway didn't win anyway. Why does it really matter? But it's, it was an exposure. It was about exposure, and but the pressure was all around the breakaway. But it was pretty cool racing for a Spanish team at Spanish Grand Tour.
It is funny because the TV breakaway, that concept of the TV breakaway, has been something that in the modern era, I would say, is diminishing a little bit as the breakaways become a lot more competitive. What would you say in the time that you've been racing? What do you think is the biggest shift that you've noticed in the peloton? Is it the fact that these breaks aren't lasting as much as they can? Is that something that we make up as viewers and you think it's pretty much the same? Is it rider technology? Is it nutrition? What do you think is the biggest leap in that time that you've identified?
Yeah, I mean, it's completely different to 2017 now. And
Yeah.
pretty much every breakaway that goes up the road is with really good riders. And no breakaway, I think, is looked at as, oh, this is going to be an easy day. Every breakaway now has a lot better chance than it did back then. The general level in the peloton is just phenomenal. Everyone is so good. I think a lot of that comes down to nutrition. We're all tracking what we eat when we're at races, and we basically refill the tank every day. So no one's running on empty. Everyone's running on a full tank of gas, and I think it just accelerates everything. And obviously that is also when we're at home, and so we train harder, and then we get faster. And I think at a certain point too, with the breakaways having a higher success rate, is we're going so fast that there's only so fast you can go to bring back the breakaway. Like you can't ride much faster. I mean, I saw a UAE tour on, what was notoriously, 7 years ago, 3 riders would go up the road and they'd get 5 minutes and they'd be easily reeled back in before a bunch sprint. But, 5 rider breakaways of 5 strong guys going up the road are getting caught in the last kilometre. And it's a real cliffhanger, because there's, on those flat roads with tailwinds and whatever, you can't ride at 70k an hour. There's only so fast you can go. So I think just the higher speeds also make it better conditions for breakaways because we are going so fast.
Just jumping back to the breakaways though, one thing that I heard about at Tirreno, I wasn't able to watch the Tirreno final stage, but I think they were saying that Uno X was chasing back Del Toro, or was chasing back one of the breakaways, and there was talk about why Uno X was helping Del Toro because they were basically doing the work of pulling back a breakaway for him. How much do you think UCI points and the desire to get a 5th place instead of a 6th place because of the bump in UCI points, how much do you guys, on your end, how much is the conversation about UCI points, the need to grab UCI points, and then the importance of those things that maybe we don't pay attention to, like the difference between coming 9th on GC versus 10th on GC? Are you ever told you need to control that break and bring it back because that person's going to get 1 place above us and that will mean that we score less UCI points?
At this point, no. As a team, there hasn't really been any talk from staff to riders about points, but I'm absolutely certain it's a very serious consideration in their planning for races, in the strategy that we have for races. But I think absolutely that has changed race strategy in general, and you do see things like that happen. So guys, from a team that's riding 7th on GC all of a sudden start pulling, and spectators might be like, what the hell is going on here? But there is, I think there's a lot more at stake, and especially with the promotion relegation system, any team that's not in the World Tour or, at the back end of the World Tour rankings are going to be racing every single race with points in mind. And yeah, I think it's really early in the cycle. We're obviously only a couple of months into the 3-year cycle for that to be a real center point of any strategy. But I think it's definitely changed race strategy in general for sure, and is a center point for teams pre-race briefings. And if it isn't now, it most likely will be at some point in the next 3 years of this cycle.
So the next question that I wanted to touch on is the B&B Hotels KTM collapse. So you were on Mitchelton Scott, which then becomes the Bike Exchange team. And you then at the end of 2022, you are due to move over to B&B Hotels KTM, which is different to the Archaea B&B team that collapsed in 2025. My understanding is you've got a contract signed, you're good to go, and then this team can't secure funding, and there's the announcement that it's going to collapse. and that's in December of 2022. What's that like as a pro cyclist, under the impression that you're making a shift? I guess twofold. Number one, what was the rationale behind the shift? So you go from the Aussie team to the French team. What was the rationale behind that? And then what is that like, I guess, to use a colloquial expression, getting caught with your pants down a bit there with the team just collapsing right at the end when, most rosters are chockers?
Oh, it was horrible, to be honest. It was really stressful. Yeah, I think, looking back, it was a really good learning experience. It was horrible at the time. I've never ever had stress like that before in my life. I mean, my hair was falling out. Waking up in the morning with hair on my pillow.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
I mean, it was horrible. Really, 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 really stressful. 2022 was one of the best years I'd ever had. I had quite a few options contractually. One of those options was to stay at Jayco, at GreenEdge. I was super happy at that team. It was a really, really good team. Love all the people there. The decision to move wasn't based off not having an offer with them or not being happy there. It was like a career pivot. I wanted to explore the potential of trying to race some bigger races for myself, and being realistic at the only way that was going to happen was if I went to a smaller team, because I wasn't good enough to be in a big team and look for leadership at bigger races. At GreenEdge I had leadership at races like Copy Bartley and some smaller races like that, Czech Tour, and I did well in those races. I got some podiums and the odd win here and there. And I was at a point in my career at an age where I was like, if I don't try now to ride for myself at a bigger race, then maybe I'll never ever get this opportunity again. And I had some offers from some big team, from World Tour teams, but also this B&B option, which was a small team that was, supposedly going to grow with an injection of money from what we were told was like the city of Paris.
Yeah.
So it enticed me to choose that team, which obviously was a terrible decision at the time. Well, not at the time, but it proved to be a terrible decision. Even had went to mid-October get together in Paris with everyone on the team, and
really,
Mark Cavendish had joined the team, which,
yep,
as a rider in my situation, you think, Cav's joining the team. It's
gives you a sense of confidence, I'd imagine.
Exactly. And I sort of already knew Cav quite well. My wife, she's from the Isle of Man, so I know Cav, and I'd spoken to Cav and about the team, and he was super optimistic about the team, and I was like, this is great, and my agent thought it was all good, and that's ultimately their job too, to reassure you and to be in the know about teams and their security or longevity, and I think we all just had the sheet pulled over our eyes, and it went pear-shaped in the last minute. As you say, it was December, and we had things started looking shaky in the weeks before that, but to have a group Zoom call where you're told that the team is done and it's like mid-December, it was devastating, because obviously that every team is full. The UCI only have a limit of 30 riders on each team. You start going on Pro Cycling Stats and see how many teams don't have 30 riders, and it's pretty much none. I was incredibly lucky, though, that I had and have really good people around me that helped me. And even, I think it's really worthwhile mentioning how good GreenEdge were in this situation as well. They were trying to get me on the team, like trying to get an exemption from the UCI to get me back on the team, so to have 31 riders instead of 30. which meant a lot at the time. Obviously, I'd made the decision to leave, but it was on very good terms, and they understood. I explained why I was leaving. And then obviously in this situation of turmoil, they were fantastic, and they were really pushing to try and get me back. So I'm really grateful for that too. But ultimately that didn't eventuate, and I think I was on my way back to Australia. Well, no, I don't think I remember this vividly because it was a terrible time. I was on my way back to Australia with my wife, and we'd actually just recently got engaged at that time.
Yeah.
And I was jobless.
That's terrible. No wonder why you're losing your hair.
She was racing. She was riding for UAE. So we knew she had a job that we'd come back from Oz for. But I thought I was going back to Oz and then going to come back to Europe, and that was it. Thought that was my career done. And it wasn't until we were in the Dubai airport when Rick Verbrugge called me. He was the sporting manager at Israel Premier Tech at the time, and he'd basically been persuaded, I think, by a bunch of riders on the team and some staff that they should try and pick me up. And they gave me a lifeline contract, and I think honestly it's probably one of the best things that's happened in my career, although it was very, very hard at the time.
Yeah, well, fortunately, it looks like you've been able to hit the Rogaine because you've got a fantastic head of hair now. So that's all leveled itself out. But obviously, like you were saying, a lot of the teams were throwing, there were some big teams that were putting contracts towards you. Was Israel Premier Tech one of those teams at the time that had offered you a contract, or did this one sort of come out of the blue?
I never personally had any contact with them in like sort of June, July when contracts were going, but I do believe there was some sort of mild interest on their part, but nothing that eventuated to anything concrete. So no, this was there wasn't anything from them in the options I had back in June, July of 2022, but it's it really did come out of the blue, for December, and it was literally a WhatsApp message and then a phone call from Rick. And then it was like the 23rd of December. So things moved pretty quickly.
How good. And then you're over in Israel Premier Tech the next year. You end up winning the Volta Catalunya against Tadej Pogačar in 2024, which would have been a huge win for that team. But what I wanted to ask you is what's it like beating Pogačar at the line?
Yeah, pretty crazy.
I mean, this isn't 2017 Pogačar either. This is 2024 Pogačar.
Yeah, and I mean, it was also kind of, it was from the bunch too. It was a stage race from the bunch, and it was, obviously he was almost undefeated in most races he did at that time. Well, always
still, yeah.
But look, it was just the circumstances. I think I had really good legs. The team were riding fantastically. We had a great leader that day in Stevie Williams, who I was actually riding for, and he'd won 2 Down Under at the start of the year, and he was on fantastic form. It was a great finish for him, and if he wasn't on the team, it would be a finish that I'd be racing for. But he was, he's a level above me, so I was on duty for him, and it just sort of, things evolve on the road, and you need to use racecraft and race nous and sort of put everything together and adapt to situations on the road. And I think Stevie and I really, really click in that sense and understand racing well and can make decisions on the fly that aren't necessarily what the pre-race plan is. And it just so happened that it led to me winning that stage. And for myself, who basically I've been a domestique my whole career, it was sweet, and just really nice actually. And I think the way it was done was even nicer, that it wasn't from an early breakaway. It was from the bunch in the heat of the moment. And it was like, I mean, I thought the whole last few hundred meters that he was going to pass me. But yeah, I mean, I also had a really good day, and I think if you watch the footage against the rest of the peloton, I'm holding my own quite okay, and he and Stevie are coming like rockets, and I just held on. So yeah, it was really cool.
There's something no one can take that away from you. When you're sitting on your rocking chair at 80 years old, you can say, I beat Pogačar in a one-up sprint. That's pretty impressive. But I did want to ask you, like, obviously the Bike Exchange team is a good team. No one's taking that away from them. But jumping over to Israel Premier Tech, you've got people like Chris Froome, who, I mean, Chris Froome's the reason why I stopped watching bike racing for a period, because he was so ascendant. The Team SkyTrain basically choked all the races, and it became a bit mundane. But obviously, he is incredible. What was it like jumping over and riding with people like Froome? Were there any lessons that you were able to take off some guys like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And although I am at the time when I moved to this team, I was reasonably experienced, and I've done a lot of the big races. I think you can never stop learning, and particularly when you're around greatness like that. I always say I try to be like a sponge and absorb as much as possible. And a guy like Froome, he's just fantastic. He's super relaxed, laid back, and really happy to help and give his advice. And I think something that was so special about Froome was his desire and his want to always do the job, to do this job as a bike rider and to give everything. And when you watch him, you can see why he was the killer that he was. And it just shows you that there's obviously elements of genetics and talent, but if you don't have what Froome had, you're not going to do what he did. And I think that's really what separates a lot of these guys, is that killer instinct and that that energy to always do everything to the absolute max every day of the year. And that was really cool to see. And obviously just how friendly he was and how open he was also pretty special to see in person and be on the bus with him and learn from.
Yeah, no doubt. So I wanted to go to 2025 with Israel Premier Tech. It's obviously a challenging year. Now, that year's been done. There's been changes. I don't want to go over what the mood on the team was necessarily, things like that. But what I did want to ask you is, from your perspective, I would imagine that you would feel that you have a significant, maybe not a debt is the wrong word, but that you are loyal to Israel Premier Tech due to the circumstances of when you received that contract, in a way that maybe some other riders wouldn't have been. And 2025 was a challenging year for the outfit. You've got moments like the Volta España where the team is, you've got riders getting tackled on the road by protesters. What was it like for you as a rider on the team? How did you square that circle riding for a team like Israel Premier Tech? People, I don't want to beat it around the bush. There would have been people on the side of the road that would have hated you just for the jersey that you were wearing. What was that experience like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's everyone knows it was like you say, it was really challenging. But I think what was incredible about that time was the group that we had and have in this team. And like you say, I certainly feel a sense of loyalty to this team. There's no denying they saved my career, and I think they've helped me grow as a rider, and really they've refined what I'm good at and enabled me to do what I love doing, and which is being a domestique for key guys, and they really support me in that and believe in me to do that well. But there were plenty of other riders on the team that didn't need to have that sense of loyalty because their careers were saved, but they had that loyalty. And I think that speaks volumes of our team. The atmosphere within is just, I think, probably the best in pro cycling. The people we have, the staff we have, the riders we have, which ultimately creates the culture we have, I think is what kept everyone going and what kept this team running so smoothly through that period of turmoil, and what kept everyone believing. It was challenging for everybody, and everyone had their own story to tell, but we all stuck together. And I think we've all come out stronger from it. And I think it's actually astonishing how everything's evolved, and it's been a pleasure to be a part of this team, and I definitely never contemplated leaving this team because of the people. And it's an amazing team, and not definitely not scared to say that.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously now, I mean, moves were made in 2025. There was the talk initially. I mean, they removed the branding from the jerseys, and then eventually the team did change owners, and it's now NSN. How has that shift eventuated? Has it been a relatively seamless transition? I mean, the team has been performing well. The Tour Down Under was a good race for you guys. The season has started off well. How have you found that shift from Israel Premier Tech to NSN? And has, I guess, much changed? And I'm not trying to approach that from a negative, like, is it just the same thing with a different branding on it? But I mean, it is a shift. How did it impact the team and the philosophy behind the team?
I think it's of course been a new change. It's a new identity. It's a new organization, let's say, and it's but I think what's so important is that the fundamentals of the group and the culture that we have has been protected, which ultimately means that huge transition has been quite seamless for us as riders. I'm sure that staff have probably absorbed a hell of a lot more stress than any rider has, which again speaks to what I'm talking about with how lucky we are with the culture in the team. There was a last minute bike brand change, which of course should cause turmoil for every rider, but somehow the team managed that situation fantastically. And we've always had everything we've needed in terms of equipment, albeit like with it being such a last minute change, stressful for the team. But like I said, as riders, pretty cruisy. And I mean, I think our new colors are awesome, and I think a lot of riders, love the new colors too. And as a transition, I think it's been as good as it can be. And the fundamentals of the team have remained intact, and I think that's what's really important to me, and why I love being here.
Honestly, I think everyone loves the colors. I can't think of a more drastic kit shift than potentially when Jayco jumps over to that purple and grey kit. I think the NSN kit is one of the best in the peloton, if not the best in the peloton this year. What was it like at the unveiling? I mean, the IPT kit wasn't breaking any ground, and then all of a sudden you get this Art Deco sort of postmodern sort of crazy kit design. What was that like at the unveiling when you guys like, I can get behind this?
Yeah, it was like we'd sort of heard some whispers from the odd person in the staff, like, have you seen the kit? It's pretty wild, it's pretty different. So there was a little bit of hype before we sort of got it presented to us, and I think cycling kit's always really hard to judge from like a photo. So we
Yeah.
didn't get to see it in the flesh at first, and you sort of see it and you're like, oh, it looks pretty good, but it's hard to tell until you see it on someone. And it was a few days after we saw some images that we did some team photos and we had the kit in the flesh, and honestly, it was actually a pretty mixed bag of how it was received by riders. You know, some riders loved it, some riders didn't like it. But I think once you saw it on and all of us as a team, I think everyone loved it.
Yeah.
What I really like about it is it looks like a sporting team. It looks, it looks like a race team rather than like a really reserved kit that, obviously speaks to people buying the kit. If you want to be a little bit more discreet and fit in on a bunch ride or something. But I like that our kit is out there and you can see it, and it's different. But yeah, I think it was pretty well received, and there was a lot of buzz around it. But like I said at first, when it was just the images, it was 50-50, and there were people, oh, I don't know, I'm not sure about that. And then it was only a matter of time until I think everyone was convinced that we looked pretty cool.
Yeah, big time. All right, so let's talk, to finish off, let's go over what your season then looks like at NSN, what the big projects are for you. So you're heading to Milan-San Remo first. That's, especially after last year, that's going to be a huge race. What's the team heading into? What are the goals? What does success look like for NSN at a race that I think most people have this written on Pogačar and BDP?
Yeah, completely agree with you on that one. Especially yesterday in the last stage of Tirreno-Adriatico, it was quite clear that Van der Poel was on a training ride. He split the peloton to bits early on in the stage and rode for 30k without flicking his elbow once for any support. Destroyed the peloton.
Dropped Philipsen, didn't he?
Yep, dropped his whole team. It was just a group of some GC riders and a couple of their support guys, and I was sitting in the wheels of this small group like, oh my God, this is like there's a motorbike on the front. And he didn't even look like he was trying. It was phenomenal. So he's, as we saw in Tirreno, he's definitely on form, cleaned up a couple of stages there. For us, honestly, it's actually still a bit far out that we've gone over our strategy, let's say. But we're fielding a team with Biniam and also Corbin strong. Corbin stopped in Tirreno. He's been a bit sick, so that might change a little bit our plans. I'm not sure. Depends how he bounces back. But I think, goalposts in these big races have probably shifted for most teams in recent years with the dominance of Pogačar, Evenepoel, and Van der Poel. I think obviously you got to aim high. You got to aim to go into the race and try and win. But I think there's also a sense of looking at the outcome after the race to gauge whether or not it was a success. I think it's very hard to put a number on success before a race like Sanremo or Liège, just because of how things are raced now and because of the competition that we're up against. You have to be realistic. Obviously, we have some phenomenal riders on our team, and I think aiming for a podium is for sure going to be our objective. But whether or not success is defined by a podium at the end of Sanremo, I'm not sure. And I think if we go through the motions and sort of execute a good race and put our leaders in the right spot for them to be enabled to do the best performance they can do, that will probably be a successful race, regardless of what the result is next to their name.
On the bright side, Pogačar tends to signpost. Cipressa, Poggio. We all know how it's going to shake out. I guess it just comes down to whether you guys have the legs on the day to be able to follow those attacks, which we did see last year. No one thought Ganna would be there, and he was. So if you show it with the legs on the day, yeah, you're a good shout to podium, like you said. So what is the rest of the season? I tried looking up your program. I wasn't able to find it, I'm sorry. But what, after MSR, where are we heading? Where's Nick Schultz going?
It's a little bit up in the air at the moment. I will maybe be doing Pays de Loire in France at the start of April. It's a 4 or 5 day stage race. And then into some of the Ardennes. Which ones, I'm not sure. Probably definitely Liège, and then maybe Flèche and maybe Amstel. It depends on a few of our leaders where they're going. And then I'll be going into the Giro.
Yeah, nice.
So that's something else that sort of plays a part in my program structure for the next 2 months, is what kind of works best to be better prepared for the Giro. And sometimes that means skipping some of the Ardennes. But sort of in the role I am in the team, it's sometimes a hard balance to get right when I'm needed for support in certain races. Maybe my own preparation for a Grand Tour goes a little bit on the back burner. So we'll see. I think that's more or less what it looks like, though. Pays de Loire, Ardennes, and then Giro, and riding a lot around Corbin and trying to get a stage win with him at the Giro would be, a huge part of my early season. That's for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Just G him up. Tell him there's this thing called nominative determinacy, which is like your name suggests. There's a lot of cyclists that seem to be called Watts and stuff. I think halfway up the climb, if he's starting to flag a little bit, just, come on, Strong. Surely it's got to play a part at some point.
Yeah, I think so.
So I reckon G him up with that. So you can't be Corbin weak today. You got to be Corbin Strong.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Don't tell him who told you, but do it. Look, Schultzy, thank you so much. I really appreciate you giving us the time. Genuinely the best of luck in the season. And I am really glad that the team culture seems to be really strong. It is really good to hear. Regardless of where people felt last year, I think what we want is to see riders succeeding in an environment that is secure and that is strong. And it really genuinely brings me joy to hear that you feel like NSN has managed to carry that through. So yeah, like I said, all the best. Thank you so much for your time. Good luck at MSR. It's going to be a wild ride. And I know pretty much everyone that listens to this or watches this will be watching the race. So keep an eye out for Schultzy.
Cool. Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Absolute pleasure, mate. Enjoy.
Cheers.
All right. Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed the pod. If you did, give it a like. Super important. If you can also chuck a comment in, give us some love. We would appreciate it. We are all about the love. And we'll try and give you something back. And finally, if you can share this with a mate, that would be huge. We're trying to grow the pod. I believe that we're doing good work here. Hopefully you do too. And if that's the case, it obviously helps if more people are listening, because more people means more guests, and it becomes a great cycle where you get the riders that you want. We get to keep doing what we love. So if you could do that, it'd be fantastic. You must know someone that might not hate this. And with that, I leave you for another week. Thank you very much for listening.